There have been significant changes in the battery sector over the last 6 to 12 months, all sorts of interesting developments. And then on top of that, we have the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the European Union's response to it, which is basically to say we're going to electrify to get off Russian oil and gas. And that raises the question of what role batteries will play in that process. So I'm going to talk to Dr. Kai-Philipp Kairies, who is the CEO of ACCURE Battery Systems of Germany, about that. So welcome to the interview, Kai-Philipp.
Hello, Markham.
Yeah, good to have you back. Let's talk about the state of battery technology. Have I kind of got it right that there have been a lot of changes in the industry in the last 6 to 12 months?
There certainly have, but I think it's nothing new. The battery industry has been extremely dynamic over the past decade, but I believe that now it's more visible to the general public. Which is great because it really helps to accelerate those developments, maybe make it more attractive for people to go into that field and work there, which is desperately needed. But yeah, there's a lot of things have been shifting, and I would say into a good direction.
Now, my impression is that there are a lot of new, maybe not new chemistries introduced to the market, but different chemistries are becoming much more visible and being adopted by different industries. Like I did an interview with you last year about lithium iron phosphate, which will go into lower priced electric vehicles, and we have flow batteries on the utility side of things. What are some of the developments in those other chemistries other than the typical lithium ion with nickel, magnesium, and cobalt in them? What are some of what have you seen over the last little while?
So one thing that we've seen in the market is a sharp increase in many of the resource prices, like lithium, like nickel, and others, and that has effectively led to an increase in battery storage prices, the first time in a decade, or probably longer. And of course, all the assumptions or all the plans that many companies, that many governments had regarding their storage policy were based on the assumption of continuously decreasing prices. So now we're in a situation that we need to figure out for a moment. And one obvious way to navigate around that, as you mentioned, is alternative technologies. You mentioned flow batteries, which I believe are still an interesting technology, but I don't see that they're market ready to take over the gap that lithium-ion batteries might leave if they become more expensive, or if it's maybe not just expensive but not available at all. Many companies struggle with finding battery supply at the moment. The technology that I believe is most exciting to take up the role of lithium ion is actually sodium ion batteries, and there's two reasons for that. One reason is they are similar enough to lithium ion batteries to use lots of the machinery and processes for lithium-ion batteries. So you have immediate scale effects, which is great, and it's needed to ramp up fast and to have a potentially low cost once you've ramped up. And the other thing is we have companies like CATL who have gotten behind that technology and who said that they're going to scale it. And if CATL wants to do something, they have the means to actually be successful in that, which I believe is extremely important.
So it sounds like, and I remember an interview I did with you, it might have been in 2020, where we talked about how these kinds of technical issues were forcing engineers to come up with very innovative solutions, to the amount of critical minerals that might be in a battery, for example. And it sounds like we're having the same kind of response to the issue of critical mineral supply and rising prices. Would that be a fair argument to make?
Yeah, I would say we are actually seeing the exact same response that had already basically led to switching or diversifying from NMC to LFP. And because that was to get around cobalt and nickel. And now we see that the lithium is also increasing and starting to become scarce. And so the next logical step, if we follow that idea to keep as many components as possible, but only change the things that are difficult to get to, would be sodium ions, because similar machinery, similar overall architecture, sodium is abundantly available, that's great. And as we found, the energy density in sodium ion has a lower energy density than lithium ion, but it's not so important anymore, right? And just one example, we just saw this prototype of Mercedes driving 1,000 kilometers on a single charge in a 100 kilowatt hour battery. No one needs 1,000 kilometers of range, but this also means that you could ride 500 kilometers on a sodium ion battery, right? Even if it only has half the energy density. And that's great. And that opens up a whole new range of possibilities for engineers.
Well, let's talk about the European Union. What role will the European Union's decision to electrify their member country economies as quickly as possible, where will batteries fit into that? And what impact might that have on battery deployment?
Yeah, so I would abstract a little bit by saying we need electricity storage, and batteries certainly are a proven and good way to store electricity, but there's also other options that we need to speak about. And the reason why we're looking into storage in the first place is because it helps to integrate more renewables into the grid without making it unstable. And if we really want to go away from natural gas, from oil, from coal at the same time, while in Germany also phasing out nuclear, this really leaves us only with two options, basically. It's solar and wind. A little bit of biomass maybe, but we don't have that much space in Germany, for example, even in the EU to have substantial amounts of biomass in our electricity system. And so storage is always needed to keep the grid stable at high shares of renewable energies. And now the one thing where Europe really has an advantage compared to countries like the US is the EU has a very strong power grid. It is exceptionally strong. And so lots of the volatility of renewable energies can be leveled out by transporting the electricity from Denmark to Portugal. Whereas if you have a comparably weak power grid, like in the US, that's simply not an option. And when you think that building new power lines can take 10, 15, 20 years, and building a battery can be done in 9 months, that's the most attractive option for many of those decision makers today.
Well, Kai-Philipp, thank you very much for this. Always appreciate your insights.